Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Fearless Generations with Terry Sayer and Kelly Fox.
Hello and welcome to Fearless Generations, 12 Steps to Freedom. I am Kelly Fox, and we are talking Step 4, Compassion. And tonight we're going to be talking about how compassion can bring understanding and how that can lead to you giving yourself more compassion. So let me bring on my beautiful co-host, Terry Sayer. How are you doing tonight, Terry?
I am doing wonderful. I'm sitting here in front of my fireplace with my blankie, and I'm just all ready to delve into this amazing topic of compassion.
I love it. I can picture it all in my head. We have a great guest coach on the show tonight. We're excited to have you meet her, so please welcome Carolyn C.J. Jones.
Thank you.
So, Carolyn, tell our listeners a little bit about who you get to serve and what you get to do.
I get to serve mostly women who are struggling with resentment, and I show them how to recognize, release, and resolve resentment so that they can find forgiveness, and from that, they find peace. So I get the beautiful job of helping people find peace in the end of it all, and they get to drop those rocks in their backpack that they've been carrying for years with the resentment. And the feeling of freedom is just amazing.
I bet. I love it. So how does compassion come into play with how you support your clients?
Compassion brings us to such great understanding. And it brings us to understand the foibles of other people and of ourselves and their operation. May I tell a little story?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, this is about compassion and also about how I found forgiveness. So I used to get drunk and yell and scream at the guys I was with. I had like a few deeper relationships. And I used to get drunk and yell at them that they were worthless and would never amount to anything. Wow, when I remembered this, I was horrified because I didn't even mean it about them. I meant it about myself. When I realized that, I had an aha moment. And that moment it was logical and it stood to reason that all those years my father told me I was worthless and I would never amount to anything. He meant it about himself. Oh, this was life-changing.
Yeah,
it was. Suddenly I saw him as just another human being, not my father. And I began to have a little bit of understanding for why he acted the way he did when I was growing up and the trauma that he inflicted. And I began to realize that, well, I learned later that hurt people hurt other people in the same ways that they themselves have been hurt. So the cycle of trauma just continues. until someone stands up and says no more. But back to understanding. So when I had compassion for this man who had the worthless wound just like I did, well, it was about a year that I went back and forth between anger and compassion for both my mother and my father, until about a year later, I realized that I had forgiven them both. And when I realized that, the feelings of peace and freedom were just incredible.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting the way that you brought understanding into that act of compassion, because you finally understood what you had done, how you had treated others based upon how you had been treated, and then on how your father had probably been treated as well, which was the cycle of trauma that was continuing until you stood up and broke that cycle. And I think that that understanding is like you said, it is transformational, and it does allow you to forgive your dad and your mom, and then to forgive yourself, which is probably the last person we forgive, right? And giving ourselves that compassion and understanding that everybody is just trying to get their needs met. Everybody's trying to get their needs met. You understand, when you understand, they just don't know how. And so how they tried to get their needs met was inappropriate. It was hurtful, and yet they were just trying to get their needs met as well. And I think that's when, likewise, I was able to forgive my father and continue to work at forgiving, and then forgive myself for the anger that I had, because it was, anger at the pain I was feeling. And my wholeness is to have inner peace. And when I have that inner peace, I feel it. I know it. I know when I get into that state, and that state of peace makes me whole and gives me that ability then to have compassion, not only for people that I perceived to hurt me because they were hurtful people, but just to understand when I was angry, it wasn't that I was trying to hurt people. It was just that I was hurting myself. And it was anger was the way that I expressed it. And it wasn't appropriate, but it was all I knew to do. It was all I'd seen as a child, and it was all I knew to do. And once I understood that, my life changed just like yours. And I can access that inner peace that just, that visceral experience of having peace just feels good, right? It just feels,
it does.
It's a spiritual experience. It's really a feeling of oneness, with your higher power, which for me is God. It just makes me feel at one with him, and that I have that peace that he promised, right? He promised us that peace if we could understand our role to love ourselves and to love one another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that in something in response to what you said, Carrie, and that is that the rats, it's not coming to me. Hold that thought. It'll come back
happens to me all the time. You'll think
I don't
of it.
like it.
You'll think of it. Well, I think that when we can have a better understanding of how our fear affects us, how our fear triggers us, how our fear has us, gets us behaving in the ways that we behave when we're triggered, that we realize that we are not our fear, we are not our trigger, we are not our self-destructive behaviors, that we are more than that. That's when we can have an understanding of, this was something I did. This was who I used to be, and today I am someone different. Today I make different choices, and you can go forward living more in freedom now that you're aware of what living in fear is like, and deciding that you don't want to live that way anymore. But you have to be aware, and you have to have skills and tools to live differently. It's not a one and done. It's a continual practice. We're all going to be affected by fear. It doesn't go away. We just learn better skills. We get better at doing proactive behaviors. We get better at recognizing it all faster before we go further down the rabbit hole than we want to. And as we continue to make choices in what we call freedom, then we can have a better understanding of why we did what we did. Why we choose to not do it any longer. And we can give ourselves compassion and love and understanding and forgive. Forgive who we were. Forgive the choices that we made. Forgive ourselves for hurting others and hurting ourselves.
Well,
and
that's
when we can
true,
do that, and when we can do that, that's when our fear loses that hold on us. That's when the shame lessens. That's when the guilt goes away. And that's when we can more easily make choices in freedom.
Yes.
So understanding is I feel a huge part that comes with compassion. And that's mainly compassion for ourselves. And when we have it for ourselves, it freely comes for others.
Yeah, that's true. I remembered what I was going to say.
Great.
It has to do with, it has to do with understanding fear a little bit. And one of the things I've learned along the way is that underneath fear lie certain emotions. And the most common ones are like hurt, disappointment, loss, or the threat of loss, shame, humiliation, emotions such as that, worthlessness. And that's what's really under our fear. And so if we can identify that feeling and then soothe that feeling, it helps with our fear. So we gain that understanding of what's behind the fear. I was really amazed when I read that and I thought about it. And it was like, yeah, that's right. I was really actually hurt rather than mad. And that's how I expressed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if we can have a better understanding of our feelings, then we can really expand that, really expand our feelings vocabulary. We can get real specific and aware of what feeling we actually are feeling and address that feeling. And understand that sometimes our feelings lie. And but it's still important to acknowledge what we're feeling, process what we're feeling, and then move forward in what we're committed to, and not be still all in that feeling and taking action, but processing it, reminding ourselves what we're committed to, and then moving forward with actions on that commitment, not on the feeling. And I think that's a way for us to not have those regrets where we lash out in anger or in hurt or in, devastation or whatever it is, but that we allow ourselves to process it and then act from a place of what am I committed to?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think that's a great tool. Yeah, that we call that the 4 A's in our Fearless Living toolbox. And I don't know how many times I tell share that with my clients, because we could get stuck in our feelings, and our feelings are just feelings. They're not right or wrong. They're just feelings. And so just acknowledging the feeling and then allowing that feeling to go through us, because it's proven research that we can just let it go through us. And Rhonda, our mentor, likes to say, go from the top of your head out your feet and just feel that feeling as intensely as you can, but don't let it get stuck. Let it go. Let it go through you. Feel it. Absolutely feel it. And then just let it go through you. And then ask yourself, well, what am I committed to? So if it's a relationship and you're feeling disappointed, you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, okay, in this relationship, I'm feeling that. I'm going to acknowledge I'm feeling that. I'm going to let it go through me. Now I'm going to say, am I committed to this relationship? Is this a healthy relationship? Is this something say it's with one of your children or your sibling or your parent. Am I committed to making this relationship work? Then I'm going to act on that, not on that feeling. And it's at that question where you can ask yourself, what am I committed to? If it's a toxic relationship, are you really committed to that? Are you committed to meaning in that relationship that's toxic? Compassion, then act on that. So I think it's at that point where you're asking what your commitment is that you can really, use every bit of intellect and emotion you have to know whether that's a relationship you want to stay in, and then act on that rather than that feeling of rejection, or maybe you're feeling, oh my gosh, I can't be alone. Well, maybe you can be, so act on that commitment. It's a really useful tool. It's a useful tool. I use it all the time.
It sounds like it, yes.
Yeah.
Another way to get to understanding your feelings is doing a self-appraisal. And I have a great self-appraisal that I teach. It's 4 responses, and you write them down. And the first part is list 2 kind and loving things you did for another in the past 2 days. This one is list 2 kind and loving things you did for yourself in the past 2 days. And then you have people sit with what they come up with until they really believe and can feel that their essence is being a kind and loving person. And then you go on and you ask the question, the prompt, list 2 unloving, unkind, and maybe even mean things you did to others in the past 2 days, and then you do it for yourself. When I first did this, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to uncover here? Because what you did was really bad. Well, it turned out to be highly empowering, because I realized that what I did, and I realized I didn't want to be that way, So I made the choice to change it, and that was what was so empowering.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool
Yeah.
to experience it the first time.
Mhm.
I bet. And
I'm gonna
I
do
can
that.
sense
So
that. Yeah, I can sense that by doing and sitting in the loving acts first, you're able to go into that second part with more compassion towards yourself.
Yes. Good point. Yes.
Yeah, because I could see
I love
myself. If you, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I could see if you did it the other way around, I might be beating myself up while I'm doing the mean acts, and then not able to even get to the loving acts because I've beat myself up so much over the previous exercise. So I love that it's in the order that it's in as well.
Yeah, it makes sense that way. I, too, would be beating myself up if I did the unkind and unloving part first and the mean stuff. It's kind of embarrassing at first to admit, but if curiosity, wow, look what I did. I wonder why I did that. What was I really feeling? And that helps us get through that so that we're not then beating ourselves up.
Yeah, I think the willingness to look at something you did that was unkind and unloving is evidence that you're on the path to growth. You know, that willingness to that is really, because if we're not willing to look at that, how are we going to be able to, change? How are we going to be able to recognize that part? Because we want to be loving and kind people, and if we're not willing to get both when we were kind and when we were not, then it would be difficult to really, move forward and grow and change, which is what it's all about, right? Changing to be more loving and more kind.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's our hopeful goal anyway.
Yeah, for sure. That's why we came to this planet, right? To learn how to love one another.
That's right. And ourselves.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we are getting close to the end of the time, ladies. So, Carolyn, if our listeners only took one thing away from tonight, what would you want that to be?
If people are struggling, if you're struggling out there, have hope. And hope is an acronym. It has two meanings. The first is, hold on, pain ends. And the second meaning is, hold on, possibilities emerge.
Oh, I love that.
I know, and they do.
Yeah.
That's good.
I love that.
I haven't heard that before. Terry, what would be your desire for them to take away tonight?
Yeah, I really think because of our discussion, I think really understanding our feelings, being able to label what they are and look at how those feelings affect our behavior and letting those feelings move through us, and really understanding the why behind those feelings, and then moving on, acting on our commitments but not, I think it's so important that people don't stuff their feelings. I think that brings so much pain and misunderstanding to our lives when people stuff their feelings. So recognize our feelings, understand our feelings, let them go through us, and then act on what we're committed to. I think that's really a message I would want to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, the thought just left me. It's going around now, but I think that it's really important that we have compassion for ourselves, and that we see that compassion for ourselves is more important than having compassion for others. Because if we can have it for ourselves, it's going to freely come for others. And I think that when we can have compassion for ourselves, we can allow those feelings to go through us. We can give ourselves permission to feel, permission to release, permission to move on. We can give ourselves permission to forgive, not only ourselves but others. And I think that is that's essential for our growth and for us to receive those things that we desire in our life. I want to thank you, CJ, for being here with us tonight. We have loved having you on the show. You've brought such value to the audience. I know that everyone is appreciative of it. I want to give you a moment to share your contact information. So if we have a listener out there that wants to learn more about you, they know where to go.
Yes, definitely. And I want to say, too, thank you for having me on the show. This was really nice. I enjoyed the discussion. Very meaningful. So my website is where people can go, which is www.carolyncjjones.com. It's my name, which is Carolyn C.J. Jones. And on my website, there's a contact page. And if you just fill that in, I will get the note or whatever your request, if it's a request. The other thing you could do is email me. And I'm at Carolyn C.J. Jones, there are 2 J's, at yahoo.com. So those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, CJ. We appreciate you, and I'm glad that you had a good time.
I did. Thank you so much.
Well, you made it a good time for all of us.
Well, thank you.
We want to remind you all that the 12 Steps to Freedom were created by Rhonda Britton, the CEO and founder of the Fearless Living Institute. If you would like to know more about Fearless Living, please go to fearlessliving.org. If you'd like to know more about Fearless Generations, please go to fearlessgenerations.org, and you can find out everything you need to there about Terry and I, what we have going on, all of the upcoming workshops, and good stuff there. You can also find information for our guest coaches, as well as all our past episodes of the podcast right there on our website, fearlessgenerations.org. We thank you all for being here each week, and we wish you well this Monday night or whenever you are listening. And until next time, be fearless.
Be fearless. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Bye-bye. Good night.